Today, I'm sitting here with Chase Barber, and we're going to give you a little bit about
No, that's good. That's good.
bloopers.
History of Edison Motors. We are going to give you the history of Edison Motors here today.
Are you serious? Oh, fuck, we're doing it again.
No, that one's good. That one's
Okay.
good.
So now that we broke the ice, why don't you go into what is your role at Edison Motors?
Yes, I'm CEO and co-founder of Edison Motors with Eric Little.
And how did you get to that point? What's your backstory? Where did you come from?
Well, I come from a trucking background, so I knew right from kindergarten that I was going to be a truck driver. That's what I wanted. Like, I wanted to be a truck driver all through high school, wanted to drive truck. That's what I wanted to do in my career.
You're not a first generation trucker. It's your family was truckers before that, correct?
Yes, yeah, I have quite a background of truck drivers. From my great-grandfather, who used to run mule trains from Hope on the Brigade Trails over towards the Tulameen. He ran mule trains and up into Upper Nicola outside of Merritt. My grandpa was a logger. He drove logging truck, and one of my earliest memories is riding in the passenger seat of his truck in the snowplow, heading out to plow snow.
So where did your trucking career start?
Yeah, I started as soon as I could after high school. I still had my N and a little single axle snowplow, put my new driver sticker on the back of the snowplow, and as soon as I could turn 19, I went in, got my class 1, and then I was driving truck after that.
So you got your turn 19, got rid of your N, and you got into a snowplow? What class was that? Class 6?
I had my class 5 with the snowplow. Once I got my class 1, as soon as I turned 19, I wanted to see North America, and I was going to be a long-haul trucker. That's what I wanted to do. And, yeah, turns out the States won't let you in until you're 21. So that kiboshed that plan for into the States, but I went all across Canada. I drove all the way out to New Brunswick from Vancouver. I've driven all the way up to Inuvik, Northwest Territories. I hauled on the ice roads I've been actually drove truck up into Lupin Mine, up in Nunavut. So I have been to every single Canadian province and territory except PEI. That doesn't count because it's too small.
But you now run a couple successful businesses, and most truck drivers don't necessarily have the business mind. How did you acquire that skill? Has it always been truck driving you've done? Or?
Okay, so I wanted to be an owner-operator, and I was like 20 years old, 21 years old, somewhere in there. Been driving truck for 2 years. And I failed as an owner-operator my very first time. And I knew I wanted to have a trucking company and have all these trucks and irons, and I loved owning trucks, and I bought a truck that was a little too new. It had a few breakdowns that were more expensive than I thought starting out. I didn't really plan on those extended costs. And then that 2008 financial collapse hit, and the trucking market dried up. And so I made enough money that I was able to get rid of the truck without owing anything. And I kind of just basically broke even, had a little bit of extra money in my pocket, and I thought, you know what? If I'm going to do the trucking thing, I'm going to go to the university. And my mom was pushing me to go to university. Go to university. You don't need to be a long-haul truck driver or being a truck driver your whole life. And I thought, okay, I'll go. And we're talking. I think it was January. And I'm like, okay, I'll go next September. So I went and started hauling logs. And that's what I helped use to pay for, saved up, go to school. I'm like, okay, I'm going to save up my money. I'm going to go to university. I'm going to learn all I can about running a business, do this smart, and figure out how to exactly do it. Except when I went to university, they said my grades in high school I was too dumb to do business. That's straight up. They're like, yeah, your grades suck, Chase. You're not, I don't think you can handle, like, why don't you go for an arts degree?
How did you end up doing? Did you throw that back on your face?
Yeah. So I found out that economics was in the arts program. And I'm like, oh, I really like economics and how the economy works and all that. I'm going to go study economics. And if I take economics, you can take way more business electives as an econ major. So I can take all the business programs I want. And just out of pure spite, I think, of the counselor being like, I don't think you're smart enough to do business, took heavy calculus courses, and I ended up with like a straight A 4.0 GPA for my entire university career.
So when you graduated with a 4.0 from university, it's funny to me, or what were the dots to connect to get you back in the driver's seat?
Okay, so I put myself through university by driving truck in the summer. That's what I did. And I went out rig moving one summer, winch tractor, and I made $50,000 in 4 months of university, or 4 months of summer break during university. Made $50,000 to go back to school with my trucking trade. With all that, with that pure 4.0 GPA, 4 years of university, I kept second place in the Bank of Canada economic forecasting competition. I was a president of the economics club, and even after that, I got second place. I got offered a job at the Bank of Canada in Ottawa. And it was $45,000 a year starting salary. To live in Ottawa was $45,000 a year starting salary after university, and I made more in 4 months driving a truck. And Eric had been a good friend of mine, and we had talked, and we were like, he was in the same thing with his background in accounting, and wasn't really what he was super passionate about. He wanted to have a business that do some energy, construction, that sort of thing. We said, you know what? Screw it. We made more money as a truck driver. Let's start up a trucking company.
You actually met Eric in school, did you not?
Yeah, the beginning of my 4th year of university. Once I got back from England, I met Eric. And
you met your business partner in your business class. That's pretty awesome.
Actually, I met him at Tim Hortons. He was working at Tim Hortons. I could grab coffee every morning. And every morning I'd grab coffee, we'd just start bullshitting more and more. And
how did you go from meeting Eric and realizing that you make more money driving truck to going into business with Eric, and what was it that you guys did?
Okay, so we put together the last of our student loans and the money we had, and we had about $10,000 left between both of us. So I found a truck that a guy was willing to sell us, truck and trailer, for $4,000, and we spent $6,000 fixing it up. And this truck was a 1969 Kenworth that had been sitting in his field for like 15 years. And basically we were like, can we have it? And like, $4,000, it's yours if you want it. And everyone thought we were crazy. You can't take the rest of your student loans, spend that money fixing up a 50-year-old truck from the 60s and go to work as a trucking company.
But you did.
We did.
Now, driving truck, I know, did you then team drive it, or how did you split up there? You went and drove it, and what did Eric do? How did that work?
So I drove it. It was a 5-axle long logger, and I was a trucking background, and I'm going to drive this truck, and I'm going to make the money for us, and you get out there and you do the sales for the trucking company. He's like, we want to target mines and mine construction, so like, let's get in there, like, love to do some energy systems, and that's always what we were kind of passionate about, is the off-grid systems. And I'm going to go drive the truck. I was going to make the money, and Eric literally flew up to Watson Lake after university, way up in the Yukon, had a little cabin with a wood stove, and he just went up to the mines, and he ended up getting a job in town, and we used the truck to buy another truck and expand and buy another truck and another trailer and kind of grow and keep more revenue coming in. And that's how we just kind of grew the company to the point where we were comfortable starting to tackle energy projects. It wasn't easy, but...
What was your entry level into energy? How did you go from your small growing trucking company and expand into energy? What was the first steps?
Well, the first step were we went hauling for a mine in the Yukon, and because that's where we were, you got that mining contract. Then the mine went bankrupt, and we got hammered hard on a bunch of invoices, like 2 months of hauling, 2 months of work that we didn't get paid for. So once again, we took the last little bit of our money, took one truck, parked the other two, and we went down to Grand Prairie, Alberta, and I started hauling for the oil and gas, which is a lot of remote power, a lot of remote generation. And I put Eric in as my swamper at this time. I said, okay, this time you're going to learn the ins and outs, and I have the idea for it. It needs to be skid mounted.
Your solar plant?
Just the solar in general. we started looking, we did a few solar projects, and what we found out was like the labor and the effort to go out into the middle of nowhere with a crew of guys to set all these solar and everything took too long. It just made it financially unfeasible, and that's why it wasn't being done up north. Like, it was just getting that crew up into the middle of nowhere was a pain. And Holland, okay, well, we'll figure it out. And I went back and we started rig moving. Eric was my swamper on the truck, and I made him be a swamper in order to figure out how these skids moved. And you see, in the oil and gas industry, everything moves on skids. They're prefabbed structures that everything sits on. Which tractor picks them up or a crane lifts them on. They get prefabricated in a shop, trucked out to site, set down, plugged in. They're good to go. That's all you need to do with them. Because everything in the oil and gas is so remote. And I said, well, this is the way the oil and gas energy industry works. Why don't we take that proven technology for oil and gas and apply it to these hybrid diesel, electric, solar systems? And I said, like, we need to design a solar mounted oil field skid. And that's what we did. We put the money for the trucking company into this, and we installed a little bit of solar and a little bit of these batteries. Okay, it's off grid. Now we need batteries. So now we design these batteries.
What would then be your first breakthrough entry project that you did and completed with your solar?
Yeah, the first real breakthrough one was, this is Eric's credit. He came up with the idea. There was a tiny little First Nations community way up in northern BC that we did. And about 50, 60 people or so. And what we noticed is that when he looked at their power consumption, they had a huge peak load demand. Everyone would get off work around the same time, get home, turn all their lights on, that kind of thing. And they ran a 90 kilowatt hour generator to meet that peak load. But they ran it full time all the time. And you're like, well, that load only exists for like an hour or two a day. The baseline load was only like 20, 25. So what we did was we went in, downsized it to a 35 kilowatt generator. So it can still handle a little bit of peak in that. But the battery, we went up there with a big battery bank, and that took that peak load demand. We put in a large solar bank that maintained it during the day. The generator actually didn't even run during the day. We put in about 24 kilowatt hours of solar. So that was enough to actually, like, when everyone was out working or doing whatever, it would recharge the battery with solar. That battery would give us about 4 or 5 hours of run time. So 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, that all came in. That met that peak load demand. It then trailed off a little bit of solar, and then when the batteries hit about 40% of their energy reserve, the generator would auto start, recharge the batteries, run for a few hours, and then shut off again, let the batteries do their thing to maintain it all night. So what you have is you went from running a 90 kilowatt hour generator 24/7 to running this 35 kilowatt hour generator 25, 30% of the time. We ended up billing them $140,000 to do the system, and they saved about $85,000 in fuel in the first year. So a year and a half payback. That's on buying a new generator, solar, batteries, installed, everything said and done, paid itself off in a year and a half of the fuel savings. Plus, there was a couple other nice benefits. Is that one of the guys said, like, it was the first time that that reserve had been quiet since he was a kid. They'd just gotten so used to listening to this generator in the background constantly, an old Deuce diesel just all day in the background. Now it was quiet during the day, quiet in the evenings. Northern BC in the summertime when they had tons of solar, you could sit out in the lawn. You didn't have to listen to any generator, nothing. It was just pure quiet. The bears started coming back. The deer started coming back. The birds weren't as scared. The wildlife regrew. It was just a much more peaceful thing for the community, and they saved a lot of money doing it. So that was really our big breakthrough into that diesel electric.
You proved that you could do it. You learned lessons from it, I'd imagine. And did that take off, or was it a slow build? You did some other projects? How do you go from the generator to the battery to the solar?
How did it take off? Yeah, it was slow. People were skeptical. They wanted to see that first data for that first year and a half. You build a system, you're like, let's do another one. They're like, hold on, let's see if the data works. Let's see if your thing was right. It was. And in that year and a half, we we grew that truck company. I think we had our fourth truck, and we had an issue with one of our mechanics.
Do we go into that? Probably not.
No, I think so. Yeah, especially this one, we fired him for selling cocaine at work. He then got arrested by the cops for selling cocaine. And then after that, he got out of prison all pissed off. And to get back at us for firing him, and I guess while he was in prison, his girlfriend was sleeping with somebody else. And he kept one of our spare keys to my bed truck. And he took the bed truck, smashed up the other trucks in the yard, wrecked a bunch of stuff in the yard, and then drove it into the building where his girlfriend worked after going on a joyride through the middle of town, leaving destruction behind him.
That must have been crippling to your company. Where'd you go from there? Did you pack up? I'd imagine.
Well, luckily Old Blue wasn't in the yard. Old Blue was parked at our house. Old Blue's at 1969. So that Old Blue was okay. Good. Perfect. And we sat down. We had, obviously, the insurance money for the trucks. It was deemed not at fault for obvious reasons. The truck was parked. It was locked. There's nothing we could do. But we had to make a call. And do we pursue these energy systems? If we're doing that, we're not as busy. At this point, we were doing 2 systems a year. It's not as busy. Do we pivot to that? If we keep focusing on the trucking company, that energy is going to take a back burner. And we could make more off the energy doing fewer projects than we could full time with the trucking. And at that point, we were just, you know what? We're going to move back to British Columbia. We're going to focus on these energy systems, and that's the way we're doing this.
So you've stopped trucking. You've started focusing on these solar hybrid projects. Where did that get you? What happened next?
Yeah, okay. So we actually reached out to Finning Caterpillar and started talking with them. They had some interest in that skid-mounted solar racking system. Turns out the same issue that worked really well for us at bringing in modular units was a solution that they were looking for. They wanted something that they could deploy like that because they were tired. It was a pain to find solar installers, and a lot of their projects were remote mine projects way up in northern Canada, and then you got to find the solar installers and then do the ground racking. Now there's another environmental assessment to go on to make permanent alterations where the skid mount could just be deployed. So we entered into like this licensing contractor agreement, like, okay, you can use our skids, you can put it in the models, we'll install it for you, but we want to be your contractors. We want to build it, we want to install it. It can be a CAT project. We'll use the Caterpillar brand solar panels, and that's how we'll get that ball rolling.
You went from there, and you're now doing light towers.
Yeah. The light tower, I this is one of the ones I get to take credit for too. Is I looked it all around, and I was thinking about all these light towers that were diesel powered. They're burning diesel just to create light and provide a little bit of backup power. And I thought, I'm like, well, why can't this be solar? We've done solar like on large scales, shut down big generators. What if we did solar and batteries to shut down these small little tiny generators? Like, someone's got to go around every night, fill them up. It's always noisy. They always smell. Like, it's never great emission systems on these tiny little motors. And get rid of the noise pollution on site, get rid of the smell, get rid of the guy that has to go around, get rid of the risk of fuel spills and environmental contamination. And I sat down one day, and I was sitting there with Eric, and I'm like, this will work, trust me. And I flipped over the back of this pizza box or the pizza we had the night before, grabbed a Sharpie, and I just started drawing on this pizza box. I'm like, this is how it's got to be. This is the way to jam the most amount of solar, because I looked at the competition, and there wasn't enough solar to make 100% solar work. So I'm like, this is the way to jam as much solar as we possibly can onto a trailer with the batteries. And me and Eric went to work, and this is where Eric's genius in electrical engineering took over, and he just made the system super efficient, super clean. And we're like, hey, Kat, you know how you like those other solar things we had? What about this solar light tower trailer? And Kat loved it. It was great. And it was a piece of shit when we started. But we improved it and we prototyped it with them. And it went out and got customer feedback. It was like a 1.5-year process. And it turned it into this rough concept to this really clean, sleek unit that we're now sending all over Western Canada.
You are Finning's main solar distributors, main solar supplier. What would you say?
Only solar distributor supplier, from as far as I know. We are there. We are Finning Caterpillar's solar part of it.
That is a huge accomplishment, and that is a huge, great people to be working with.
Oh, fantastic! They really their patience was fantastic as we were developing this project. Like the first prototype was very much a first prototype. It was to what Carl is to Edison Motors, to what this new one we're building is that everyone gets better. The parts get more compact. We can get rid of redundancies, streamline it, make it more efficiently, work more efficiently, build it cheaper. And yeah, we ended up even getting a factory in China that prefabricates our trailers now. Like we got it all modular to the point where they can pre-weld all the steel, paint it, we assemble it, we bolt it together, we put in all our wiring, our batteries, and we just connect everything up and then ship it out the door. That's the level we've gotten to in 2 years.
You learned your lessons, you fine-tuned it, you are becoming masters of your craft, and you are now combining your solar expertise, your electrical background that you've now created into trucks.
Yeah, and it really came after we did a hybrid project like that one up north when I was actually driving back and I was thinking about it in this truck, and me and Eric had talked about an electric truck for the last 5-6 years. We had talked about an electric truck when we were just purely even just a trucking company. We talked about electric truck. I'm like, it makes sense for logging. You're going up the hill empty in BC. You come down loaded. The regenerative braking rebuilds the power to go back up. I'm like, that's the best use case for a piece of logging equipment is to make it electric. And we reserved a Tesla Semi. About 5.5 years ago when they did their big press reveal. During their press reveal, they had a reserve option on their live link on their website, and we reserved it. And it was like $25,000 US to put down. We put our money down. I'm like, okay, I'm in on board this new technology. I want to see what this electric truck can do. Let's do it.
And they didn't do it.
They did not.
So you decided to do it yourself.
Yeah. After 4.5 years, I'm like, okay, you still aren't producing the trucks. Give me my money back. And I'm going to build my own truck. And that's where I announced it on social media. We called it Edison Motors. Stealing Tesla's idea.
A historical joke.
A historical joke about Thomas Edison stealing Nikola Tesla's idea.
In no way related to...
Nope, had nothing to do with Tesla Motors and the fact that we were annoyed at him. Nothing to do with that at all. Just purely Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. But yeah, we thought, well, how would we do it? And we've been thinking for the last year before even starting it is that, well, we do these hybrid projects. And it was when I was really driving back down south and I was thinking, I was in Old Blue, that 1960s truck. And I was thinking how do we do it? It's very similar to these communities that we've done. Large peak load demand. Takes a ton of power to build that initial inertia. Once you're rolling, doesn't take much power. So we can do the same thing. Instead of sizing a 90 kilowatt generator down to 35, we can size a 15-liter engine down to a 9-liter engine or a 6-liter engine. It can maintain the batteries, and the batteries can get that peak load demand. And you can see those huge fuel savings come in. I'm like, well, that's how to do an electric truck. The range isn't there yet for batteries only, so we can do it this way. And I went from hauling logs and so one of the funny parts is, as everyone, I went back to driving truck when we came back to BC. We were doing a lot of product testing for the light tower. And people were like, well, you went right from logging into this. How'd you go logging on TikTok but still have all this stuff in the background? And part of it is that the product testing to go through Finning. it took a year and a half, 2 years, and we went back to our old way of, we need to make money. I'll go hop in a truck. Eric, you do handle this product testing. He has a brilliant mind for it. He is an absolute genius. You do that. I'm going to help out, but I'm going to help out as well, and I'll bring in the money for us. I'll go haul logs. I'll keep those trucks rolling and bringing that money in, that we can keep that product development. We can get those places in China building the frames. We can get the parts we need, the inventory we need to produce. We can hire a couple guys, and we can start scaling. Like, we're ready to go once the orders come in. So that's where like the COVID happened, and I was in this transition for logging, and I'm like, okay, let's do it. The solar light, we had some big orders come in. I can now focus full time on the shop. And then I announced, hey, we're going to build our own electric truck, and as at the same time. And yeah.
And you did.
Yeah.
And Edison Motors is a thing, and it is gaining huge speed, momentum, and success.
Yep.
And you can find out more later. Something.
Yeah. That is the history of how Edison Motors came to be, and the wild adventure of a couple kids after university struggling, getting knocked back, taking a step forward, getting knocked back, taking a couple steps forward, and how that led to start a diesel electric truck company.